The Black Business Council says that it wants 70% of the economy to be in black hands by 2030. The council is currently hosting a Black Business Summit under the theme Black Business and its Vital Role in Economic Reconstruction and Recovery. The summit is discussing the vital role that black business can play in the reconstruction and recovery path of South Africa's economy following a slump caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Black Business Council says that economic transformation in South Africa has been set back a few years and something drastic needs to happen before the next decade to move ownership into the hands of more black people. The BBC added that legislation such as the broad-based black economic empowerment have not been able to transform the country's economy. Well, to discuss this, the Black Business Council Summit and the unemployment rate figures released yesterday, in fact, we're now joined by the BBC's CEO, Kganki Matabane. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting us. Good evening, Peter and the listeners. And sorry, the viewers.
Okay, so you're in the middle of your summit, and I'm just wondering, when we look at the theme, what is it that you're trying to get out, and what have the kinds of thoughts been coming through today?
There are various things, but maybe firstly, because we're in the middle of the pandemic, we had to adapt and adopt a new model. We have a hybrid system that we adopted, so majority of the people who will have wanted to be at the summit physically can't be there. But the attendance has been very great virtually. We were looking at various themes, but the main theme is the economic recovery and the role that the black businesses can play. We're looking at, for example, we were sitting here 27 years into democracy, and 25 years after the signing of our constitution, but much has not changed. If you look at the 74% youth unemployment, you don't even need to do a research. You can only assume that out of the 74%, probably 90% of the unemployed people there are young black people. If you look at the economic ownership of the ownership of the economy, is likely to be, depending on which method, but it can't be 30% by black people in 27 years. And you may find that even that ownership is a bit suspect. Most of the people who attempt to be owning, we are going to find that what they have is encumbered. So if they own 30%, that 30% you find is actually owned by financial institutions. So we cannot be celebrating the milestones that are there of freedom, political freedom, while we don't have the economic freedom. If we continue at this rate, our kids will actually spit on our graves and say, these people failed us. You've seen, for example, some of the remnants of people who don't want to change. School kids are subjected to racism. It's because we're failing to transform the economy, because once the economy is transformed, it reflects the population. Some of the behavior won't be there. So we were looking at, for example, how can black business participate in the African continental free trade area. We had the Secretary General who was live there. We were also saying, let's look at crime and corruption, because there's a narrative there that crime, especially corruption is black. Every time when people talk about corruption, they seem to say it's black people who are corrupt, while it's not true. We've seen big global companies being involved in corruption. But when you look at how they get treated, someone does corruption, they pay the money back, and nothing happens to that. But when it's a black person, will know the house they stay in, will know the car they drive, will know the schools the kids are going to, and all those things. So there needs to be a change in narrative. And as the majority of black people, we also need to be seen to be in charge. We need to understand the power and the power in numbers. We can't only be the numerical majority, but minority in everything else. So those are the things that we're looking at. Yes.
All right. So I think we'll unpack some of the things line by line. The first thing that intrigues me, and I think you agree with the South African Federation of Trade Unions, who's saying that things have to change. The structure of the economy has to change because we're pretty much carrying on with what we've inherited. The question then becomes, how is it that we're still where we are? On the face of it, when we hear our politicians talk policy, it sounds as if the right policies are in place, broad-based black economic empowerment, all of those are meant to help black business join in the economy. But for some reason, they haven't worked. Is it the policies? Is it the implementation? Is it the beneficiaries of BEE sometimes that are the problem? Why are we where we are now?
What we've picked up, the biggest challenge there is that people are not implementing the spirit of economic transformation. The spirit, when you're implementing the spirit, you'll implement it without wanting incentive. So what is happening, especially in the private sector, because if you look at the public sector, maybe because the owner is pushing transformation, most of this, if you look at most of the SOCs, the CEOs will be black, the CEO will be women, the executives, the ExCo, the senior management will be black, because from an ownership point of view, there's an intention to implement the spirit of the act. But what we've seen in the private sector is that they're implementing what we call a tick box approach. So they say, no, Peter is black. Let's appoint him as a board member, and we'll get 2 points, 2 BE points. Let's take this woman and put the woman there. Let's put the person with disability and put them there, and then we'll get points. That is not the spirit of economic transformation. The spirit of economic transformation says, at some stage, the ownership and the management of the economy should look like the population of the country, the demographics. But at this rate, it's not going to get there. But that is the main problem. People are implementing to get points, not to benefit the previously disadvantaged people.
All right. So let me ask you this. Are we not approaching this from the wrong angle? I mean, the one aspect is, yes, you've got all these corporations that are there, and we talk about transforming ownership in those corporations. But shouldn't we be saying, let us create many, many new businesses, many, many new corporations that are black-owned and that are doing all the things that you're suggesting, instead of focusing our attention on trying to get percentages of what's already there?
Yeah, I think to understand that, firstly, I agree with you, but we must adopt a parallel approach. It's neither A or B. So if you look at the structure of the economy, look at all the sectors, look at telecoms, look at the banking, mining, everything. They are what is called the big three or the big four. And the big four owns 90 to 95% of the economy. So if we say we're focusing on the 5%, we're not going to make a dent at all. So we should focus on the 5%, but we also must transform the 95% because that is the core of the economy. Otherwise, black people will always play in the periphery if we focus only on starting our own business. Because if you start your own business, you still need access to funding, you need access to the market. And as things stand, the big four, the big three, they are monopolizing the market. Hence, we're working with the Competition Commission to open the market. We're not saying there must not be big companies there, but we're saying the big companies must create a space. At least if they own 60%, at least the majority of the people that can compete for the 40%. Otherwise, now we are competing for 5%. So even if we own that 5%, 100%, it doesn't make a dent in the economy. So we're still going to have the same problem.
So my feeling again, if we start from the point that the businesses that are there, that have been created are there, it's still not enough, even if they were 100% black-owned. We need to be creating 10 times more than what we have to deal with the unemployment.
Yes, I think the point I was making, they will deal with the economic transformation. But I agree with you. There's a need to grow the economy. There's a need to create employment and not job opportunities. You hear people saying we're creating job opportunities, but when you do an audit and analysis of that, if someone dig a trench today for 1 meter, the following day they come and dig another 1 meter, next week another meter, those are great job opportunities. That is not necessarily making any difference. So for us, what we're saying, we need to support the creation and the growth of small businesses. To give you an example, if you are a small business, you've got 1 employee, you are then given a opportunity to do more. You've got no choice but to hire more people. But if you give the same opportunity to a big company, they'll use the excess capacity that they have to deliver on what they're supposed to do.
So who's at fault then? You know, I mean, I'm still trying to figure this out, because you can tomorrow choose to get a black contractor to do some handiwork around your house. If you're not doing that and you get a white contractor, then we are not, as black business, as black people, growing the small black businesses. The numbers of black people who have got income, have got money, are quite big now. So that these black businesses are not getting support from us. That's what I'm seeing, I suggest.
Yes, we have to liberate our mind, as Steve Biko said. We have people, for example, we've got black people who will be proudly saying that their kids can't speak any other language because they go to a private school. You find others when the number of black teachers increase in a school, they start to complain. So we also need to, as we are fighting economic transformation, we need to liberate our own minds. We need to ask ourselves serious questions to say, as black people, do we go to black doctors? Do we consult black doctors, black lawyers? Because it has to start from there. It starts small at the household level. And then it grows as you go to corporate level. You then do the same thing. But if you find that a black person as an individual does not believe in black people from home, even if you give that person a CEO position, they are not going to give opportunities to black people. So we need to have multiple discussions about our own behavior, our own system, and how we can influence the system, because it's important to circulate the rent amongst ourselves. That way we'll be able to grow. If you know, you're buying, for example, you're buying a car, you know a black person owns a car in Durban. Why can't you go to Durban and buy a car there? So those are the type of discussions we need to start having, because that way you'll grow the small business. Because it has been proven all over the world that if you grow small businesses, you will be able to deal with unemployment.
All right, perhaps one last question. We're talking about a transformed economy. It would have to be a bit more than just changing ownership. How else must the economy change? What must it look like to be able to employ these masses of young people that are leaving school and are jobless?
Yeah, I think we need to, for example, we need to do certain things like localization. So if you take the COVID challenge that we've been facing for some times now, at some stage we did not even have simple things like a mask, and that can be produced locally. And what we've opted to do, we've opted to create jobs in other countries, China and India and so on. If we can take that and bring it here, localization on many things that we buy. For example, in the continent was the biggest consumers of ARV, but we buying the ingredients of the ARVs from India and other countries. So we seriously need to look at localization and stop talking about it, but implement. Because if you look at the country for the past 27 years, we had so many great plans that were announced with much fanfare. The problem is the implementations of those plans. I'm sure if you had implemented 10% of those plans, the unemployment rate will be much less than where it is. So if we can then decide to say for the next 10 years we are going to localize in all the sectors, we should be able to create jobs here in South Africa.
Okay, Mr. Matabane, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed. And let's just hope some of your hopes and endeavors bear fruit, and that we see a serious transformation so that our youth can be employed. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Blank Business Council's CEO and Executive Director, Kganki Matabane, speaking to us about the need for a transformed economy if we're going to start to deal with recovery and employing youth. We take a break.